My name is Lula, and at 65 years old, I never expected to feel so small at my daughter-in-law, Madison's birthday dinner. The elegant restaurant buzzed with conversation as I sat at the edge of the table, watching Madison command attention in her designer dress. My son Jacob smiled nervously between us, unaware of what was coming. When Madison called me useless in front of everyone, something inside me broke and hardened. If you're watching this and have ever been taken advantage of by family, I understand completely. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to make a difficult family decision. I spent 35 years as a financial advisor before retiring, helping countless families secure their futures through smart money management. My husband Frank passed away 8 years ago, leaving me comfortable but alone in the home where we raised our only son Jacob. Jacob was always my pride and joy, brilliant, kind, and determined. He excelled in school, graduated with honors in computer science, and landed a great job at a prestigious tech firm in the city. Despite his success, Jacob remained humble and considerate, calling me regularly and visiting at least twice a month. We had the kind of relationship many parents dream of having with their adult children. Everything changed when Jacob met Madison at an industry conference 3 years ago. He called me the very next day, uncharacteristically excited about a marketing executive he'd been seated next to at the keynote address. "Mom, she's amazing," he gushed. "Smart, ambitious, beautiful." And she actually laughed at my terrible programming jokes. Within weeks, Madison was all Jacob talked about. 2 months later, he brought her to Sunday dinner at my house. I still remember her perfectly coordinated outfit, immaculate makeup, and the way she complimented my home while subtly glancing at my modest furniture with what I now recognize was barely concealed judgment. "Your home has such character, Lula," she said, running her finger along my well-loved dining table. "It must be nice having so many memories in one place." Jacob and I prefer a more contemporary aesthetic. At the time, I chalked it up to nervousness. She was polite, articulate, and seemed to make Jacob happy. That was enough for me. When they announced their engagement, after just 6 months of dating, I had reservations, but kept them to myself. Jacob was 32, certainly old enough to make his own decisions. "Are you sure this isn't moving too fast?" I asked him privately. "When you know, Mom," he replied with that dreamy look I'd never seen on him before. Madison is exactly what I've been looking for. Their wedding was an elaborate affair at an exclusive venue overlooking the city. Madison's parents contributed, but when costs ran over, I ended up covering the difference, nearly $20,000 more than planned. I didn't mind. I wanted Jacob's day to be perfect. After the honeymoon, a 2-week stay at a 5-star resort in Bali that I helped subsidize, I began noticing changes in Jacob. His twice-monthly visits became monthly, then occasional. His casual attire was replaced with designer labels Madison selected. The modest apartment he'd been proud of was suddenly embarrassing, necessitating a move to an upscale neighborhood they could barely afford. Madison believes in investing in quality and appearances, Jacob explained when I questioned the wisdom of stretching their finances for a larger mortgage. In her field, perception is reality. When they found their dream home, Jacob called me, excitement and anxiety mingling in his voice. "We love it, Mom, but we're a little short on the down payment." Without hesitation, I transferred $50,000 to his account. "Consider it an early inheritance," I told him. "Your father would have wanted you to have it." What I didn't say was that it came from my retirement travel fund, the money I'd set aside for the trips Frank and I had planned to take together. 6 months after they moved in, Madison mentioned they were redecorating and having trouble keeping up with expenses. Against my better judgment, I added her as an authorized user on one of my credit cards. Just for emergencies, I said, and household necessities while you're getting settled. Madison hugged me then, one of the few genuine moments of affection she ever showed me. You're a lifesaver, Lula. We'll be so careful with it. The first month, there were charges for home goods and furniture. Expensive, but reasonable for new homeowners. By the third month, I noticed charges from luxury clothing retailers, high-end restaurants, and spas. When I gently asked Jacob about it, he seemed embarrassed. Madison's building her professional network, he explained. These expenses are investments in her career. We'll pay you back soon. They never did. Instead, the spending increased. Madison's Instagram page showcased weekend getaways, designer purchases, and exclusive restaurants, all with carefully filtered photos, but no mention of who was financing this lifestyle. Meanwhile, Jacob worked longer hours, looking increasingly tired during our now rare visits. I kept quiet, telling myself I was helping my son through a transitional period in his marriage. The truth was, I was afraid of losing the relationship completely if I created conflict. Madison had a way of making Jacob choose sides, and I didn't want to be the mother-in-law who came between them. Looking back, I should have established boundaries much sooner. But sometimes, love blinds us to the manipulation happening right before our eyes. Madison's 32nd birthday arrived on a crisp autumn evening. She had selected an upscale French restaurant downtown, where appetizers alone cost more than what I typically spent on an entire meal. 2 weeks earlier, Jacob had called to invite me. Madison's having a small dinner with some friends from work, he said. She'd love for you to come. Something in his tone suggested this wasn't entirely true, but I appreciated the gesture nonetheless. I spent days selecting the perfect gift, a pair of sapphire earrings that cost more than I'd planned to spend, but seemed appropriate given Madison's tastes. I had them wrapped in the signature blue box from the jeweler, complete with a white silk ribbon. I also took special care with my appearance, visiting my hairdresser and wearing my best outfit, a navy blue pantsuit I saved for special occasions. When I arrived at this restaurant, the maitre d' led me to a private dining room where Madison sat at the center of a long table, Jacob beside her. 6 other guests, all Madison's friends, were already seated, engaged in animated conversation that halted briefly when I entered. "Lula, you made it," Madison said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She remained seated as Jacob rose to greet me with a hug. "Mom, you look great," he said warmly. "Happy birthday, Madison," I said, presenting the gift box. "I hope you like these." Madison opened the box with practiced grace, her expression carefully neutral as she examined the earrings. How thoughtful. Very classic. One of her friends leaned over to look. "Those are pretty. My grandmother has similar ones." I felt the first sting of the evening as Madison quickly closed the box and set it aside. "Let's get you seated, Lula. We saved you a spot right there." She pointed to the far end of the table, the seat farthest from her and Jacob. As I took my place, I noticed everyone had nearly full cocktails. They'd clearly been there a while before the official start time I'd been given. A server appeared immediately. "Can I get you something to drink?" Before I could answer, Madison called out, "Lula will have the house white right, unless you want to splurge tonight." This was followed by knowing glances among her friends. "Actually, I'd like a sparkling water with lime, please." I said to the server. The conversation resumed as if I weren't there, focused on office politics and industry gossip that excluded me by design. I sat quietly, observing the dynamic around me. Madison's friends were all like her, well-dressed, ambitious, and hyper-aware of status markers. They spoke loudly about vacation properties, car upgrades, and exclusive events. When it came time to order, Madison announced to the table, "Order whatever you want. The sky's the limit tonight." Her eyes flicked briefly toward me with a satisfied smile. I watched in disbelief as she selected the most expensive items on the menu: premium oysters, followed by Wagyu beef, and suggested wine pairings for each course. Her friends followed suit, ordering without regard to price. Jacob looked uncomfortable but said nothing. When the server reached me, I ordered a simple salad and the salmon, still expensive by my standards, but modest compared to the others' selections. "Just the salmon." "Are you sure?" Madison asked loudly. "It's a special occasion." "This is perfect for me," I replied. Madison's friend Tiffany, a sleek blonde with an enormous diamond engagement ring, asked about wine selections. As it happened, I knew something about French wines from trips Frank and I had taken years ago. The Chablis would pair beautifully with seafood, I suggested when asked. Madison laughed lightly. "Oh, we're definitely not doing Chablis. So basic. We'll take the Montrachet," she told the sommelier, selecting a wine 4 times the price with a dismissive wave in my direction. Throughout the first 2 courses, I was essentially invisible. Whenever I attempted to join the conversation, someone would talk over me, or Madison would redirect attention elsewhere with a well-timed comment. Jacob noticed my isolation and occasionally tried to include me. "Mom used to take me to a French bistro downtown when I was in high school," he offered during a lull in conversation. "How quaint," Madison replied, patting his hand before launching into a story about her recent business trip to Paris. As the evening progressed, I calculated that the bill for 8 people would easily exceed $2,000. Madison's meaningful glances in my direction made it increasingly clear she expected me to cover this extravagant celebration. I felt a familiar sense of being used, but told myself to enjoy the evening, despite the undercurrents of tension. What I didn't realize was that the worst was yet to come. As the main courses were being cleared and dessert menus distributed, the conversation shifted to professional accomplishments. Madison's friend Rachel had just been promoted to VP at her marketing firm. Another friend, Justin, was leading a major campaign for a luxury car brand. "What about you, Tiffany, still crushing it in pharmaceutical sales?" Madison asked. Tiffany nodded, describing her recent commission check with carefully calculated modesty that still communicated the impressive sum. After each person had a chance to boast about their professional success, Madison turned to me with exaggerated interest. "And Lula, what do you do all day since retiring? It must be so strange not having a purpose anymore." The table fell uncomfortably quiet as all eyes turned to me. I felt a flush creeping up my neck, but maintained my composure. "I keep quite busy," I replied evenly. "I volunteer at the Financial Literacy Center downtown 3 days a week, helping people learn to manage their money and get out of debt. I'm also in a book club and take watercolor classes on Thursdays." "How nice for you to have hobbies," Madison said, with the condescending tone one might use for a child. "It must be relaxing, not having any real responsibilities." I noticed Jacob shifting uncomfortably beside her, but remaining silent. "I find helping others very fulfilling," I continued. "Actually, I've been working on some investment strategies for you and Jacob. With your combined incomes, you could be building a much stronger financial foundation if you adjusted your spending habits a bit." Madison's expression hardened instantly. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at me across the table. The moment hung in the air. Before she spoke, her voice carrying clearly to every person present. "That's rich coming from you," she said with a cold laugh. "Financial advice from someone who hasn't worked in years. The only useful thing about having a mother-in-law like Lula is her credit card." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt as though I'd been physically slapped. Heat rushed to my face as I stared at Madison in disbelief, then at Jacob, waiting for him to defend me. He cleared his throat nervously. "Hey, should we order some desserts? I heard their chocolate soufflé is amazing." His attempt to change the subject only amplified my hurt. My own son, unwilling to stand up for me in the face of such blatant disrespect. Madison's friends exchanged awkward glances. One or two gave uncomfortable laughs, while others suddenly became very interested in their water glasses. "What?" Madison said, looking around innocently. "We're all family here. Lula knows I'm just teasing. Don't be so sensitive." She reached for her wine glass and took a long sip, her eyes challenging me over the rim. Inside, I was a storm of emotions: humiliation, anger, heartbreak. The room seemed to spin slightly, as decades of self-respect warred with my desire to maintain peace. I had been disrespected in front of an entire table of people, reduced to nothing more than a financial resource, and my son had said nothing. Externally, however, I maintained my dignity. Years of professional experience had taught me how to keep a neutral expression, even when dealing with difficult clients. I applied those skills, now taking a slow sip of my water. "I think I'll use the ladies' room before dessert," I said, quietly, placing my napkin beside my plate and rising from my chair. In the elegant bathroom, I stood before the mirror, hands gripping the marble countertop as I took deep breaths. My reflection showed a woman I'd known all my life, now with silver-streaked hair and fine lines around her eyes, looking back at me with a question: when did I become someone who would tolerate such treatment? Frank would have never allowed anyone to speak to me that way. He valued respect above all else in relationships. When had I forgotten to demand the same? A well-dressed woman entered and gave me a sympathetic smile. "Are you all right? You look a little flushed." "Just deciding how to handle a difficult situation," I replied. "In my experience," she said, applying fresh lipstick, "when people show you who they are, believe them the first time." As she left, her words, reminiscent of Maya Angelou's wisdom, resonated deeply. Madison had shown me who she was repeatedly over the past 3 years. I had simply refused to believe it, because accepting the truth meant potentially losing my connection to Jacob. I looked at myself once more, straightened my shoulders, and made a decision. I wouldn't create a scene or return Madison's cruelty, but I would no longer enable her disrespect or finance her extravagance. With newfound clarity, I returned to the table, already formulating my plan. When I returned to the table, dessert had been ordered, the most expensive options on the menu, naturally. Madison was in the middle of describing the luxury spa retreat she was planning with friends for the following month, clearly intending it to be another charge on my credit card. "It's absolutely essential for maintaining our professional image," she was saying. "Networking happens in these spaces, not just in the office." I slid back into my seat quietly, my mind made up. While the others continued their conversation, I discreetly removed my phone from my purse and opened my banking app. With a few taps, I navigated to my credit card account and selected the option to remove an authorized user. "Are you sure You want to remove Madison Wells from your account? The screen prompted. Without hesitation, I confirmed the action. A notification appeared. User removed successfully. Card access revoked immediately. A sense of calm settled over me as I returned my phone to my purse. Madison was still talking, oblivious to the fact that her financial lifeline had just been cut. And then we'll finish the weekend with dinner at Laurent's. Their tasting menu is divine, she concluded as the desserts arrived. Elaborate confections topped with gold leaf and accompanied by rare dessert wines. Should we get another bottle for the table? Madison suggested, gesturing to the nearly empty wine bottle. At close to $300 per bottle, I knew exactly what she was doing. Several of her friends eagerly nodded their agreement. Jacob glanced at me apologetically, but remained silent as Madison ordered another bottle. I simply smiled, my decision already made. As the evening drew to a close, the server appeared with a leather folder containing the bill. "Whenever you're ready," he said, placing it in the center of the table. There was a moment of theatrical politeness as Madison's friends made vague motions toward their purses, but everyone's eyes eventually settled on me, especially Madison's, whose expectant gaze made her intentions crystal clear. "I've got this," I said, reaching for the bill before anyone else could. I opened the folder to find exactly what I'd expected, a total of $2,370, including an automatically added 20% gratuity. Madison smiled triumphantly at her friends. Lula is always so generous. Without comment, I removed my personal credit card, not the one Madison had been using, and placed it in the folder. The server took it away and minutes later returned with the receipt for me to sign. "Thank you all for a lovely evening," I said, standing and gathering my things. "Happy birthday, Madison." Madison, already planning how to spend more of my money the following day, gave me a perfunctory hug. "Thanks for coming, Lula. And for dinner, of course." Jacob walked me out to my car, while Madison remained inside with her friends. In the cool night air, away from Madison's influence, I saw glimpses of my son again. "Mom, about what Madison said in there." I held up my hand to stop him. "Jacob, I love you more than anything in this world. But what happened tonight was unacceptable. Madison disrespected me, and you allowed it." She didn't mean it the way it sounded. He began the familiar pattern of making excuses for his wife kicking in. "Yes, she did," I said firmly. "And more importantly, I've made a decision. I've removed Madison from my credit card. The spending stops now." Jacob's eyes widened. "Mom, you can't just do that without warning. Madison has plans. Plans that involve spending my money without my consent or appreciation. Those plans will need to change." "She's going to be furious," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Probably," I agreed. "But how she manages her emotions is not my responsibility. What is my responsibility is setting healthy boundaries." I got into my car, my heart heavy, but my resolve firm. "I love you, Jacob. When you're ready to talk, really talk, about what's happening in your marriage and with your finances, I'm here. But I won't be disrespected or taken advantage of anymore, not even for your sake." The drive home was a mixture of emotions. Part of me was anxious about the fallout that would surely come. Another part felt an unexpected sense of liberation. For too long, I had allowed Madison's treatment of me because I feared losing Jacob. But in the process, I had been losing myself. At home, I made a cup of tea and sat at my computer, logging into my banking portal. I pulled up the history of Madison's spending on my card, downloading the statements from the past 2 years. As I scrolled through page after page of charges, the total grew to a staggering amount, $35,642. Luxury clothing stores, high-end restaurants, weekend getaways to spas and resorts, designer home goods, beauty treatments. None of the emergencies or household necessities the card had been intended for. I took screenshots of everything, organizing them by month and category. Then I wrote a brief email to myself, documenting what had happened at dinner and my decision to remove Madison from my account. If confronted, I wanted to have all the facts at my fingertips. As I prepared for bed, I felt a strange mix of sadness and strength. I had enabled this situation for far too long, out of fear and misplaced generosity. Now, I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my self-respect. The storm would come tomorrow, I knew. But for tonight, I had weathered the worst of it with my dignity intact. The next morning, I awoke to my phone buzzing repeatedly on the nightstand. 7 missed calls from Madison, 2 from Jacob, 3 voicemails. I played the first message as I made my morning coffee. Madison's voice filled the kitchen, indignant and accusatory. "Lula, my card was just declined at the salon. This is incredibly embarrassing. There must be some mistake with your account. Call me back immediately." The second message, left an hour later, had a sharper edge. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this is completely inappropriate. I had to use my emergency fund to cover my hair appointment. Jacob will be hearing about this." The third, from Jacob himself, sounded tired and strained. "Mom, can you please call us back? Madison is really upset. We need to talk about this." I set the phone down and sipped my coffee, preparing myself for what was to come. I wouldn't call back immediately. I needed them to sit with this new reality for a little while longer. Throughout the day, the calls continued. I went about my routine. A morning walk, some gardening lunch with a friend from my volunteer group. I mentioned nothing about what had happened, though Janet noticed something was off. "You seem preoccupied today," she said over our salads. "Everything okay?" "Just some family matters to sort out," I replied. "Sometimes standing up for yourself is harder than standing up for others." Janet nodded knowingly. "Ain't that the truth? My daughter-in-law tried to borrow my diamond earrings once. Permanently. Had to put my foot down. Holidays were tense for a while. Her understanding made me feel less alone. When I returned home around 4, a car I recognized was in my driveway. Jacob's silver Audi, the car lease Madison had insisted they needed for professional appearances, despite the drain on their monthly budget. I parked beside it and took a deep breath before going inside. They were sitting in my living room, Madison pacing, while Jacob perched anxiously on the edge of the sofa. They had clearly used their key without waiting for me to come home. Another boundary crossed. "There you are," Madison said immediately, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Would you care to explain why you canceled my card without even the courtesy of telling me?" I set my purse down calmly and took a seat in my favorite armchair. "Hello to you both, too. I didn't cancel your card, Madison. I removed you as an authorized user from my account. There's a difference." "Semantics," she snapped. "I was humiliated at the salon. My stylist had to wait while I transferred money from our savings." Jacob looked uncomfortable. "Mom, we're just trying to understand what happened. This seems so sudden." "Does it?" I asked, looking directly at him. "After what happened at dinner last night, it shouldn't be a surprise at all." "Oh, please." Madison rolled her eyes. "It was a joke." I can't believe you're being this petty over a little teasing. It wasn't a joke, I said evenly. It was a deliberate attempt to humiliate me in front of your friends while simultaneously taking advantage of my generosity. And it wasn't the first time. Taking advantage, Madison's voice rose. We're families help each other. Yes, they do, I agreed. Which is why I added you to my card for emergencies when you first moved into your house. Not for luxury spa days, designer clothes, and expensive dinners with friends. Jacob shifted uncomfortably. Mom, Madison uses that card for networking and maintaining her professional image. It's an investment in her career. Is it? Let me show you exactly what that investment has looked like. I retrieved my laptop and opened the folder with the credit card statements I'd organized. In the past 2 years, Madison has spent over $35,000 on my card. Would you like to see where that money went? Jacob's eyes widened as I turned the screen toward them, showing the spreadsheet I'd created, categorizing the expenses. $12,000 on clothing, $8,000 on restaurants and entertainment, $5,000 on spas and beauty treatments, $4,000 on home decor items, the rest on miscellaneous luxury expenses. I scrolled through, letting him see the individual charges. These are business expenses, Madison insisted, though her voice had lost some of its certainty. $1,000 at a spa in Napa Valley when I thought you were at a marketing conference, $600 for a designer handbag, $300 dinner for you and your friends when Jacob was out of town. I raised an eyebrow. Are these the business expenses you're referring to? Jacob was scanning the list, his expression growing increasingly troubled. Madison, you told me you were using your own money for the girls' trips, he said quietly. Madison's strategy shifted instantly. Tears welled in her eyes. I was just trying to build the life we deserve, she said, her voice breaking. You work so hard, Jacob. I wanted us to have nice things to fit in with the right circles for your career, too. I'd seen this manipulation tactic before and stayed silent, letting Jacob process what he was seeing. $35,000, Madison, he said, shaking his head. We could have put that toward our mortgage or invested it. Madison turned on me, then anger replacing the strategic tears. This is exactly what you wanted, isn't it? To come between us, to control us with your money. No, I said firmly. What I want is respect. What I want is for my son to be in a healthy relationship with someone who values him for more than his financial potential or his mother's credit card. You don't know anything about our relationship, Madison snapped. I know that last night, when you called me useless, my son said nothing. I replied quietly. I know that you've been spending my money while making me feel increasingly unwelcome in your lives. Jacob looked ashamed. Mom, I'm sorry about last night. I should have said something. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But this isn't just about last night. It's about a pattern that's been developing since you got married. I've allowed it because I was afraid of losing you, Jacob. But I've realized that by not setting boundaries, I've been enabling behavior that isn't healthy for any of us. Madison crossed her arms. So what now? You're cutting us off completely because your feelings got hurt. I'm establishing boundaries, I corrected her. I'm happy to help you both create a budget that works with your actual income. I'm happy to offer financial advice. What I'm not willing to do anymore is provide unrestricted access to my money without appreciation or respect. This is ridiculous, Madison said, grabbing her designer purse, likely purchased with my card. Jacob, are you coming? Jacob hesitated, looking between his wife and me. Madison, maybe we should listen to what Mom is saying. Our spending has gotten out of hand, and… I can't believe you're taking her side, Madison interrupted. It's not about sides, Jacob said, with unexpected firmness. It's about facing reality. We have $15,000 in credit card debt, besides what we've spent on Mom's card. The mortgage is stretching us thin. Something has to change. Madison stared at him in disbelief before storming toward the door. I'll be in the car. Don't make me wait long. After she left, Jacob slumped back on the sofa. Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything. I know, sweetheart, I said, moving to sit beside him. But I'm not the only one you should be apologizing to. You need to apologize to yourself for allowing the situation to continue so long. I don't know what happened, he said, running his hands through his hair. When we first got married, everything seemed perfect. Then, somehow, we were always stretching for the next thing, the next purchase that would make us happy. Nothing ever does. That's because happiness doesn't come from things, I said gently. Your father and I didn't have much when we started out, but we were happy because we respected each other and worked as a team. Jacob nodded slowly. I need to fix this, somehow. You do, I agreed. But it will only work if Madison is willing to change too. Real change, not just temporary adjustments to get access to money again. He stood up, looking both defeated and determined. I should go. She's waiting. I hugged him tightly. I love you. That hasn't changed, and it won't. But loving you doesn't mean I have to accept disrespect or financial abuse. I know, he whispered. I love you too, Mom. After they left, I felt the full emotional weight of the confrontation. Part of me wondered if I had done the right thing. Would this push Jacob further away? Had I been too harsh? But then I remembered Madison's cold voice saying, the only useful thing about having a mother-in-law like Lula is her credit card, and my resolve strengthened again. I had done what was necessary. Now, I had to wait to see what would happen next. A week passed with no word from Jacob or Madison. I tried to keep busy with my volunteer work and other activities, but their absence weighed heavily on my mind. I checked my phone constantly, hoping for a message from Jacob. Finally, on the 8th day, a text appeared. Mom, can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Just me. Relief flooded through me. Of course. Palmer's Cafe at 10. See you there, he replied. Palmer's was our special place where I'd taken Jacob for hot chocolate after school when he was young. We'd continued the tradition through his college years and beyond, meeting there for heart-to-hearts about life, work, and relationships. The fact that he'd suggested it gave me hope. When I arrived the next morning, Jacob was already there, seated at our usual corner table with 2 steaming mugs. He looked tired, with shadows under his eyes, and a wrinkled shirt that suggested Madison hadn't been doing his ironing. Hey, Mom, he said, standing to hug me. Hello, sweetheart, I replied, settling into the chair across from him. How are you? Been better, he admitted with a rueful smile. It's been a rough week. I waited patiently, letting him gather his thoughts. Jacob had always been methodical, needing time to process complex emotions. After we left your house last week, Madison and I had a long talk, he began. Well, more like a long argument at first. She was furious about the card situation, said you had humiliated her. I nodded, but didn't interrupt. When she calmed down enough to actually talk, I tried to explain how her comment at the dinner had hurt you. She didn't seem to get it at first, kept saying you were overreacting. He sighed deeply. Then I showed her our credit card statements. Our own cards, I mean. We're $47,000 in debt, Mom, not including the mortgage. Oh, Jacob, I breathed, shocked at the figure. I knew it was bad, but I'd been avoiding looking at the total. He stared into his coffee. Madison has 3 cards I didn't even know about. Designer clothes, luxury skincare, weekends away with friends, all charged when I thought we were being more careful. My heart ached for him. What happened when you confronted her? More defensiveness. She said everyone lives this way now that we need to maintain appearances. He shook his head. Then she blamed you for suddenly cutting her off and creating a financial crisis. Jacob, He held up his hand. No, Mom. You were right to do what you did. It forced us to face reality. I told Madison we need professional help, financial counseling, and maybe even couples therapy. She didn't like that idea at all. I can imagine, I said carefully. She suggested we ask her parents for money instead, Jacob continued. When I refused, she called them anyway. They came over the next day, and it was... He trailed off, searching for words. Difficult, I offered. Illuminating, he replied. Her father was sympathetic to our situation, but firmly refused to bail us out. Said we needed to learn to live within our means. Her mother, though, had a different reaction. What did she say? She was angry at you, Jacob said. Called you controlling and manipulative for cutting Madison off. Then she tried to pressure her husband into giving us money. I wasn't surprised. Madison's materialistic values hadn't developed in a vacuum. That's when I saw it clearly for the first time, Jacob continued. The dynamic between her parents, her mother's demands, her father's reluctant compliance to keep the peace. It was like seeing my future with Madison if nothing changes. He took a long sip of his coffee before continuing. We've been living separately for the past 3 days. I'm staying with my friend Tom. Madison says I'm being dramatic, that every couple has financial disagreements. But this isn't just about money, is it? I asked gently. Jacob's eyes met mine, clear and sad. No, it's about respect, honesty, partnership, all the things you and Dad taught me a marriage should be. His voice broke slightly. Mom, I don't know if we can fix this. I reached across the table and took his hand. Only you can decide that, Jacob. But whatever you choose, I'm here for you. Even after how I let Madison treat you, after I said nothing when she insulted you. Even then, I assured him, we all make mistakes, especially when we're trying to balance loyalties. Jacob squeezed my hand gratefully. I've made an appointment with a financial advisor, and I'm researching couples counselors, though I'm not sure Madison will agree to go. That's a good start, I encouraged him. Taking control of your finances is an important first step. I've also been thinking about what you said about enabling, he continued. I've been enabling Madison's spending by avoiding conflict, by working overtime to try to keep up, by looking the other way when the credit card bills came. I nodded. It's a pattern that's easy to fall into, especially when you love someone. She's not a bad person, Mom, Jacob said, a note of his old defensiveness returning. She equates love with material things. Her parents always showed affection through gifts and money. She doesn't know any other way. I understand, I said, and I did. Understanding Madison's behavior didn't excuse it, but it helped explain the complexity of the situation. People can change if they want to badly enough. That's the question, isn't it? Jacob said sadly. Whether she wants to. We talked for another hour, discussing practical steps Jacob could take to address their financial situation, regardless of what happened with the marriage. I offered to help him create a budget, but was careful not to push my advice on him. He needed to feel ownership of this process. As we prepared to leave, Jacob hesitated. Thanksgiving is in a few weeks. I don't know where things will stand with Madison by then. My door is always open to you, I told him. Both of you if that's how things work out. Or just you if you need space from her. Or neither of you if you're working things out privately. No pressure. He hugged me tightly. I don't deserve you, Mom. Yes, you do, I whispered back. We all deserve love that doesn't come with conditions or price tags. After Jacob left, I sat in the cafe a while longer, thinking about the roads ahead for both of us. I had set a boundary, and it had created ripples I couldn't have fully anticipated. But beneath my concern for Jacob was a quiet certainty that I had done the right thing. For him, for me, and even perhaps for Madison. The path to healing is rarely straight and often reveals additional wounds along the way. But you cannot begin to heal until you acknowledge the injury. For our family, that process had finally begun. 3 months passed, bringing with them the holiday season and its complex emotions. My relationship with Jacob had begun to heal through regular coffee meetings and phone calls. He and Madison were still together, but living in what he described as a state of cautious reconciliation. Madison had grudgingly agreed to financial counseling after their credit card company reduced their limit due to missed payments. The budget they developed with their counselor was strict. No more luxury purchases, restaurant meals, limited to once a month, Madison taking on additional marketing freelance work to help pay down their debt. The most significant change came when they decided to sell their house. It was Madison's idea, actually, Jacob told me with surprise in his voice. She said the mortgage is keeping us trapped in a cycle of debt. They found a more modest townhouse closer to Jacob's office, reducing his commute and their housing costs significantly. The process wasn't smooth. Madison cried the day they listed their dream home, but it represented a fundamental shift in priorities. As for our relationship, Madison and I maintained a polite distance. She hadn't apologized for her comment at the birthday dinner, but neither had she made any new demands for financial support. Small steps. Christmas Eve arrived cold and clear. I had invited Jacob and Madison for dinner, unsure if they would accept. To my surprise, Madison had been the one to respond, asking if they could bring dessert. I spent the day making Jacob's favorite foods and setting the table with my best dishes. At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Jacob stood there with a bottle of wine, modestly priced, I noticed, and beside him, Madison, holding a homemade pie. "Merry Christmas, Lula," she said, offering the pie awkwardly. "Apple. I made it myself." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely touched by the gesture. "Please come in." Dinner began with cautious conversation. Safe topics like the unseasonably cold weather, the neighbor's elaborate light display, Jacob's recent project at work. Gradually, the atmosphere warmed as we found our way to more meaningful exchanges. "The townhouse is almost completely unpacked," Madison volunteered. "It's smaller, but actually feels more like a home. I'd love to see it sometime," I said carefully. Madison nodded. "Maybe after the new year, once we've got it properly set up." As Jacob cleared the dinner plates, Madison took a deep breath. "Lula, I want to say something." I braced myself, unsure what was coming. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past months," she began. "The financial counseling has been educational, not just about money management, but about what was driving my spending." I remained silent, giving her space to continue. "I grew up believing that your worth was tied to what you owned and how you appeared to others," she said, not meeting my eyes. "My mother still believes that, but I'm learning there are other ways to measure success." "That's a valuable lesson," I said gently. "Jacob says you taught him that years ago." She finally looked up at me. "I'm sorry for what I said at my birthday dinner. It was cruel and untrue." The apology caught me by surprise. "Thank you, Madison. That means a lot." "I'm not good at this," she admitted, fidgeting with her napkin. "Apologizing, changing, but I'm trying." "Trying is what matters," I told her. "We all make mistakes. The question is whether we learn from them." Jacob returned with coffee and dessert plates, looking between us curiously. Just having a little mother-in-law, daughter-in-law chat, I explained. As we ate Madison's surprisingly good apple pie, I saw glimpses of what might be possible for our family. Not perfect harmony, but perhaps a respectful peace. Madison would never be the daughter-in-law I had envisioned, and I would never be the mother-in-law she wanted. But we could build something workable from the pieces of our broken expectations. Later, as they prepared to leave, Madison handed me a small, simply wrapped package. "It's not much," she said, "but I wanted you to have something from me, from us." At home, they would be celebrating a scaled-back Christmas. No extravagant gifts, no expensive trip, just quiet time together, rebuilding their relationship and financial stability. I opened the package to find a framed photograph of Jacob as a child, sitting on my lap as I read him a story. It was a picture I'd never seen before. "Jacob found it in some old files," Madison explained. "I thought you might like to have it." The thoughtfulness of the gift, personal rather than expensive, moved me deeply. "It's perfect," I said honestly. "Thank you." After they left, I placed the photograph on my mantel and sat in my quiet living room, reflecting on the journey of the past few months. Setting that boundary by canceling the credit card had been painful, but necessary. It had forced all of us to confront uncomfortable truths and begin the hard work of healing. There would be challenges ahead. Old habits don't disappear overnight, and trust, once broken, rebuilds slowly. But we had taken the first steps toward a healthier relationship. Throughout my life, I've learned that love sometimes requires difficult actions. Enabling harmful behavior isn't loving, no matter how much you care for someone. True love means wanting what's best for another person, even when that creates conflict or discomfort. At 65, I had finally found the courage to value myself enough to establish clear boundaries. In doing so, I may have helped my son find his way back to the values that truly matter. If you're facing a similar situation with family members who take advantage of your generosity or disrespect your boundaries, remember that you deserve better. Setting limits isn't selfish. It's an act of self-respect that can ultimately lead to healthier relationships for everyone involved. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect yourself from family members who were taking advantage of you? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of family challenges and resilience. Remember, it's never too late to stand up for yourself with grace and dignity. Thank you for listening, and may your own boundaries always be respected.